Oh, yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. How's everybody doing? We've got a cast of characters in here already. We got Snorted Poops Cuber, my favorite polar bear, on YouTube. He says, "Hello, Adega."
How?
We got Chris Persia, the Wrench of Wrenches. What's up, brother? Classic Comics is here. The Rooster in the Hen House. Dave Bob. We got to figure out what Dave Bob's going to be in the Valhalla Mafia. He's got to be like an enforcer or something. You know, a big rooster.
I think he's your gun salesman.
Yeah, that's even better. I love that. DJ Ronnie G is here. He's been a member for 32 months, and he says, "Woo, I made it." Those are starships. I can tell. What is up, DJ Ronnie G? How are you doing, brother? Hopefully you're doing well. Hopefully you're doing well. I don't know if you're coming out this year in October, but if you are, I can't wait to see you. Papa Cotton is here. What is up? How are you doing, Papa Cotton? Good to see you. Let's see. Claude Sainley is here. What is up, Claude Penny? Yes, the Wrench of Wrenches, Chris Persia. The guy who should have a wrench by his name. If he doesn't, something's wrong. Pat S is here. What is up, Pat S? How are you doing, brother? Good to see you. Good to see you.
Give him a wrench on my channel. He's there every Sunday. He makes advertising on Twitter, X, but I don't give him a wrench. I tell him, I say, you come into my place, you're going to relax.
Hell yeah.
Work. You're not working.
Oh. All right. What do we got going on tonight? What are we doing?
There has been a rash of things. I know a lot of people are disappointed with the bullying that's going on, like you shared this morning, in circles that should not be that way. There's political turmoil. There's bad news in just about every corner that you look. There's good news too. And instead of doing something dark and mysterious or what have you, I wanted to share with you something. I gave you parts of it a while ago, but I contacted my contact at Top 5. Some of you guys know I used to write for them, and they have turned to doing things that are mostly dark stories, ghost stories, cryptid videos of strange and bizarre things, where they used me for more of the uplifting stuff. And this story that I had done for them, they actually wanted to have something that dealt with the failures in human evolution, but there weren't any. People who don't know how the human body works assume things like the pancreas or various other things are failures, like a lack of hair or what have you, but it's not. The human body works magnificently well and better than any other creature on the planet. So I really couldn't. And I presented them something else. And they kept it as an option. They like it quite a bit, but since they are doing everything on the dark side of things, they haven't used it. But I'm free to be able to share with you what it is. And like I said, I had shared with you a bit of it a while back, but you're going to get the whole thing tonight. It doesn't have all the imagery that, when I presented an article to them, they would have their editors go through it, find little video clips and different things that would go along with the story, or some of the things that I presented as well. And you don't have that excellent narrator that they use. You're going to hear my voice, and it's a little weak tonight, but you guys can understand what I'm going to say. So I have a few images, but not a complete thing.
Before you get started, let me throw this out there. Psychodrove 9 threw out a 42-month member chat and said, to get here, I drove through rain, driving winds, hail. Now my feet are up, I'm fed, and I have a drink. Skol, brother.
Skol. There was another one too, wasn't there? Oh, wait, you already got that DJ.
I got DJs, yeah. DJ threw one out there too. Thank you guys so very much.
And some of you know that some of these nights I'm not here because my health is a little less than cooperative. Tonight's kind of like that, but I really do need to share something good with everybody. So you guys, like I said, this is going to be my best attempt at trying to read with my weak eyes, even though I have my glasses on. It may take a few minutes, But this is all true stuff, all stuff that you can look up for yourselves, or you can ask me anytime you like. But this is the article. Over the past 30 years, discoveries and advancements in knowledge of the human body and mind have been so unusually fantastic that many are hard to believe, leaving the researchers in awe and almost disbelief. Organs like the appendix, glands like the pineal and thymus, and mental impulses on a quantum level keep revealing just how amazing human life is or could be. The articles, research papers, and journals on these subjects are numerous and constantly changing. Any of the curious need only look through publications like, there are restrictions to these, but PubMed, New England Journal of Medicine, BioResearch International, or even the JMPT. There's a lot of them that you can look up. The following examples are taken from these sources and more. The absolute flood of information continues. And a brief interjection here, as some of you know, that was one of my pastimes. As a doctor, you have to do continuing ed, but I loved getting updated with 20, 30 different articles or research papers a month to keep up with things. The absolute flood of information continues, and the understanding of what it means to be human oftentimes seems out of reach. Old ideas like the lack of need of an evolutionary leftover such as appendix are ending up being abandoned as we discover just how much we really don't know or can comprehend. Our limitations in understanding who we are had been held to things like microscopic strength, large and diverse enough sample sizes, genetic profiles, and new and better diagnostic tools to see deeper within more accuracy. With each new tool and precise observation, the library of knowledge about what it is to be a healthy human grows exponentially. Most researchers agree we have only scratched the surface of all the things yet to be discovered in the human body. The purpose of today's video is to give examples of newer discoveries that are still under investigation, but are changing the way we think about what it is to make humans so special. We encourage each listener to open their minds to what is exploding before our eyes in the realms of human existence. Number 5. Over more than a century and throughout much of the world, the understanding of how the brain operates in normal circumstances has been held to a mechanical view or theory. This means that for the brain to work, a nerve must be excited by some sort of stimulus, giving rise to a reaction. An example of this is going on while you listen to my voice. An external sound is made that stimulates auditory components within your ears. Then it is converted to nerve impulses. These impulses travel to parts of the brain that interpret the sound as language. From there, the brain paints a picture of understanding, so to speak, so that your thoughts follow what is being said. This is highly simplified, but you get the idea. Things like touch, taste, sight, and smell all have been understood to function the same way, though using different initiating stimulation. But some things have been discovered along the way. What follows is a little more advanced than your everyday understanding of how things work, but it is still fascinating. In the beginning of human development, almost immediately following conception, a mass of cells that later become the brain is called form of massive cells that direct the growth of organs specialized in functions all get their instructions. Sorry, I read that very poorly. In effect, the brain comes first, then directed a human body to form around it. Getting a little tired, sorry. Since that beginning, there is never any more information added or removed to have a human develop and function through childhood until old age and death. There are at times that we learn new things in the form of skills for work, play, or general care for self and others. Yeah, we don't need those yet. Um, but no new information is given on how to replenish cells, repair damage, or adapt to the environment on the microscopic level. Growing another set of arms, superhuman hearing, or resistance to extremes in the environment beyond what the DNA was coded with has always thought to be impossible. But in recent times, with better records, documentation, imaging, and reliability of witnesses, we are discovering that what we thought of as human existence has exceptions. A discovery near 20 years ago and still being investigated is a previously unthinkable way for a brain to receive information. No nerves externally from the brain seem to be involved. In this research, a type of bone-mediated information transmission has been seen. In effect, the brain senses the environment by impact and stresses on the skeletal structure before a single neuron is fired off. Sensation that can be transmitted through a solid medium have been theorized as what is causing the reaction to bone-elicited brain responses. In a normal neurological response to a stimulation of any sort, a high-speed electrical reaction occurs. Ions mediate the nerve conduction in incredibly rapid rates. However, a very slight lag, almost imperceptible, occurs at the junctions of the nerve with another. For just a fraction of time, the impulse has to rely upon a more chemical-based reaction as opposed to ion trading places along the nerve. This happens several times and at multiple locations along the extremities, the spinal cord, and finally the brain. This is where the bone conduction is superior if true. No chemical reactions are present, and hence less slowdown of the information to the brain. This was very rudimentary and early in the investigation as of just a few years ago. In time and with newer tools, an answer to these early observations is hoped to be found. Now, the rest of this isn't going to be quite as complicated, but basically the story is, and they would have used imagery for it, is that there are signs, and it's becoming more and more evident, that the bone itself is a sense organ, minus any nerve impulse. Some of the reactions you see in athletes and hence other high-functioning humans will have reflexes that seem faster than neurons, and basically they are because they're receiving the information from bone or other sources, which I think this article gets into. But anyway, number 4. Since the beginnings of our recorded history, stories of magic and superhuman acts of mental persuasions on the world around us have abound. Nearly every religious text, legend, and oral history have some form of supernatural event or events within them. In more modern times, with advancement in chemistry and use of technological trickery, many more types of supernatural claims appear. Things like bending spoons, levitating objects, or starting fires have all surfaced to fool the observer into believing in some sort of extraordinary powers are at work. There are, however, some that remain unexplained by all credible observations and scrutiny. Chai Kung is one of those. With a myriad of pretenders who claim we're not there yet. The myriad of pretenders who claim the ability to heal, manipulate energies such as gravity, or even start fires, nearly all are tricks. On rare occasions, such as with Dynamo Jack, his ability to start fires and force energies has never been explained. Now, side note, if the explanation has come since then, I don't know. But this, at the time I wrote this, it was still a mystery. Then there are those mental abilities that can be reproduced in many cases. These abilities can be reproduced, measured, quantified, but can only be attributed to the mental ability or energy of the human participant. A common experiment that has so often been seen on YouTube involves and we've talked about this one before, the observation of aging food and the introduction of a human intent and emotions. Then, over time, the results can be measured. This experiment can be done by anyone. Try this yourself and see if you gain similar results. The way the experiment works, most commonly, is to fill several jars with cooked rice. Each jar must be identically cleaned and sealed to ensure reliability of the study. Once you have your samples, place a word on each jar indicating an emotion, such as love, hate, apathy, or beauty. Just make sure that the emotion has an opposite representation in your study. Over several weeks, it will be clearly seen how the jars with the positive emotions written on them tend to denature slower and with less signs of putrefaction. Those with adverse emotions become putrefied much more quickly. There is a connection, a sort of quantum mechanics. Many of you know that the quantum theory has three main properties used to define things like how a particle looks, acts, or moves. Light is given classification as having both wave and particle properties, and matter can behave like a wave. These things leave us still puzzled as to how things precisely behave and why. However, one thing is for sure: observation affects reality. In a famous study done by Weizmann Institute, electrons were forced to behave more like a wave than less were observed, and more like a particle than more intense and observation. Basically, if you watched it, it would behave one way. If you didn't, it behave another. You guys know that study. All these things tied together have led many scientists to believe that human observation and the intent has a dramatic effect on our environment and can be measured. The states of someone's health, the types and design of crystal ice formation, and even plant development all reflect our human quantum connection and influence upon our reality. That's why I always tell people, as bad as the stories that I like to share sometimes, it's the positive attitude that will make a positive outcome. All right, with this one, you could show the first CAT scan. This is number 3. Yeah, you want the CAT scan, not the person, the healthy one. Yep, that's the one. Previously, in all health studies, the assumption was given that the human was the most susceptible and weakest of all creatures in order to assure the safety to the end development when it came to treatment for any disorder. This ensures that whatever procedure or medication that result from the study is as safe to the general population as possible. We're excluding recent pandemics. That one doesn't fit. We know that. We're going to skip that. Recent years and developments have moved us away from that paradigm. However, some interesting results came from this. In fact, there have been examples where the human proves to be one of the most powerful creatures on the planet. The following examples are real and documented, though hid for reasons that will become obvious. These accounts are taken from this author's personal study and one actual event that he was part of, basically meaning me. I know these to be true. In the late 70s, a girl, who we will call Jane Doe to protect the patient's records and identity, had some birth trauma that led to a condition known as hydrocephalus. You can show the other ones as comparison. Let's see. Yeah, that one. You could obviously see that there's a lot missing in the center. That's a severe case of hydrocephalus. That's all fluid in the black area. This is a condition that is characterized by having too much fluid on or around the brain for one reason or another. In many cases, there are visible deformities of the skull and brain damage in varying degrees. In the case of Jane Doe, there were no known issues. Years later, after puberty, a CAT scan was performed on her skull that looked similar to the image we see here. The actual images are withheld to protect the woman's identity. What has become the subject of deep fascination among many who study neurology is that, for all indications and purposes, this woman has no defects whatsoever. She has a normal IQ. There are no physical limitations and appear in every way to be an absolute normal woman, though she is functioning on only 20% of available brain tissue. This would almost seem impossible. In an earlier and less well documented case comes from India. This one is bizarre. But it's credible evidence shows that this was an actual case, but much of the documentation has been lost under dubious circumstances. In this case, and you'll understand exactly why with this one as well. In this case, a man in the mid-late century lived and worked in a poor part of India when he lost most of his forearm in an accident. The astonishing thing for this man was that his forearm actually regenerated to a nearly normal reproduction of the original. Medical science was dumbfounded as to why this could have happened when there have been no other cases so recorded. Some speculate that it was a hoax, though there was enough evidence at the time to prove otherwise. Others say that because this man had no access to medical treatment, his wound was left to heal without normal sterilization of the remaining part of the limb or extended use of tourniquets. The belief being that this allowed the cells at the site of injury to remain alive enough to heal in such a way as to regrow much of the man's forearm and hand. This spinal case was overseen and managed by this episode's author, meaning me. The name of the patient, the location of the care, and all other aspects of the case are withheld by law. So please understand that the information that we provide here is all that can be provided. A young patient contacted the doctor for care of a near complete severing of the spinal cord in the neck, along with multiple fractures. The exact location was the C5-C6 vertebral level, with most of the posterior aspects of the spinal cord suffering the traumatic separation. The patient was a quadriplegic, having only slight use of 2 fingers on his right hand. Bowel and bladder functions were non-existent, having to rely upon external catch bags that were affixed externally to the abdomen. The patient was alert and could talk without issue, but the debilitation came at the later teen years and led to a deep emotional frustration. However, this patient had hope in abundance. After a year of care, what many would call impossible, the patient was able to walk. No longer were the bowel and bladder bags needed, and the future of this young man's as an adult became bright, despite having what usually results in permanent, debilitating life changes. In each of these cases, the common theme here involves neurons that were trained to operate and adapt to even the most critical injured state. The human hydrocephalic woman used what was left of her brain to its fullest ability to make up for the massive missing sections. The man with the lost arm had instructions sent via the nerve pathways to regenerate his DNA to reproduce what his pre-birth development had done by growing a new arm. And the patient with the severed spinal cord retrained the remnants of what was left of the cord to redirect nerve impulses and create new ways to function. Number 2, this is where the last pictures will start coming in. Some of you guys probably know this guy too, not personally, but have seen him. While we are astonished at some of the attributes of individuals through our world, there is a most fascinating and influential group that has had a profound effect on the lives currently and from generations past. We are blessed with significant advances in science, mathematics, music, and art, all due to the superhuman abilities from a very small and select group known as savants. Many definitions of what a savant is state that it is someone who is extraordinarily intelligent or a profound education and learning. However, the definition we will be investigating now deals with those who are far more than just extraordinary. For our discussion, we will use a savant to mean someone who has a neurological or mental disability in one form or another, which leads that individual to excel in other perceptives or creative ways far beyond what is considered possible. Example in our day are often held or heralded, and we intend to do some of these. First is the picture you see the man here. His name is Daniel Kish. Daniel lost his sight before the age of 2 due to retinoblastoma. That's a type of cancer. This left him with no recollection of eyes having sight or of ever having sight. But fortunately for many, his deficit has opened the world to many who have no eyesight as well. In his efforts to adapt and interact with the environment, he developed a skill using sound for echolocation. With short clicks, crisp sounds that he makes with his tongue, he is able to use the echoes that are made to find what is around him. His skill is so accurate, he is able to determine shapes, depth of objects, and textures to some degree. Perhaps these greatest achievements that his enhanced ability has given him and the world, he has been able to teach these skills, giving new and greater opportunities and confidence in lives of others who are without sight. Another gifted savant of our time hails from London. Stephen Wilshire was born in 1974 with autism and an inability to speak. Fortunately for him, as well as the rest of the world, his talents became evident quite early. At age 5, his teacher noticed his remarkable ability to draw and his deep attachment to making images come to life on paper. Using pen and paper as a motivation, his early teachers helped Stephen utter his first word while withholding them. So encouraged, his first words was paper. Stephen's work became so well known that he received huge recognition with being tasked to draw the Salisbury Cathedral by the British Prime Minister at the age of 8. Since that time, he has drawn many cityscapes, including a 10-meter long reproduction of Tokyo. Another astonishing gift that Stephen has is his ability to remember and draw accurately what he sees quickly. After having a 20-minute helicopter ride over New York City, he was able to make a 19-foot-long drawing that encompassed all 305 square miles. He memorized all of it in 20 minutes. And our last one, Alonzo Clemens, was born in 1958. Is yet another example of traumatic injury that led to a remarkable gift for humanity. Very early in his life, Alonzo suffered a severe brain injury that lowered his cognitive skills significantly. However, while his ability to function as a normal, he gained an ability to sculpt animals in extraordinary detail. For the first part of his life, he worked unbeknownst to most of the world. But with the release of the 80s movie Rain Man, Alonzo became discovered for his abilities. Today, he continues to create while living with his personal aid. He also helps in schools to encourage art. The thing about him, too, is if you guys ever find a video about him, he is a remarkably kind man, and his ability is just crazy. You think, well, just sculpting, but no, he's very talented. Number 1, this is the last one. This last example of our top fives comes to us from research over years in governments and college. You guys have heard me talk about this many times, but this is it written down. In governments and colleges around the world, something has been discovered that is nearly unbelievable and the stuff of science fiction, and yet it has been proven over and over again. The sad thing about it is, most people don't know about it. If everyone had, things might be considerably better in our world. There was, in the latter part of the 1990s, a study done with the help of some volunteers in remote locations. Since the study, several have followed investigations, individual aspects of this marvelous ability of humans. In the study, 2 individuals at the time were placed on opposite sides of the United States in isolated rooms that allowed no external influences other than devices meant to measure the responses of the individuals being studied. One of the individuals was given a series of images to look at. These images were meant to elicit emotions. Pictures of flowers, children at play, beautiful scenery were given. Also given were images of painful scenes, sad scenes, and things that would horrify. The subject was monitored to see how their physiology responded and reacted to each type of image. On the other side of the continent, the subject was placed in an identical room with identical monitoring equipment. The difference in this subject was simple. They were asked to only think of the other person participating in the study on the other side of the country. No other objectives was required. As these studies progressed, something amazing was discovered and repeatable. There were at times a highly accurate and duplicated physiological response by the person not being shown any image, just to think of the one person. This subject had reacted physically to the images of beauty and horror, just like the person who had actually been shown these images. What was then discovered, being even more astonishing, was that the second subject would occasionally react to an image being shown to their counterpart fractions of a second before the image was even revealed. These studies have continued and have demonstrated some of the most wonderful things about being human. One is that on some quantum level we are all connected. Our emotional makeup is influencing and influenced by each other. We are all bound by some unseen force that affects the general mood of the world. The other magnificent discovery is that, to some degree, we all have a precognitive ability, or in other words, we can sense things a fraction of a second before they actually happen. Think of intuition, or that quick flash of a sense of urgency that we all experience from time to time. We all have it, but have not honed or developed the ability due to the troubles and needs of the day-to-day living. It is there, dormant and waiting. The big picture for these top 5 in this episode is that we as humans are far greater than we allow ourselves to be even able to believe. May we all take the time to think of each other in better terms, more magical and wonderful, and by so doing, create a better world. And there you go. That unreleased top 5 episode.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a lot more in depth than I thought it was going to be. But I'm not surprised because you don't do halfway. So there is no halfway.
Too, they always trying to shoot for 15 to 20 minutes, and obviously I went for 30 minutes. So.
No, that was great.
No, it's all true. There's all true, all of it. It's all there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, I don't have a long story for you tonight, but I do have something interesting. We'll see who can figure out who I'm talking about and what this is about as we go through the beginning of this. I'm only going to read one chapter of this. In the year 1878, I took my degree of Doctor of Medicine of the University of London and proceeded to Netley to go through the course prescribed for surgeons in the Army. Having completed my study there, I was duly attached to the 5th Northumberland Fusiliers as assistant surgeon. The regiment was stationed in India at the time, and before I could join it, the Second Afghan War had broken out. On landing at Bombay, I learned that my corps had advanced through the passes and was already deep in the enemy's country. I followed, however, with many other officers who were in the same situation as myself, and succeeded in reaching Kandahar in safety, where I found my regiment and at once entered upon my new duties. The campaign brought honors and promotion to many, but for me it had nothing but misfortune and disaster. I was removed from my brigade and attached to the Berkshires, with whom I served at the fatal Battle of Mawand. There I was struck on the shoulder by a Jezail bullet, which shattered the bone and grazed the subclavian artery. I should have fallen into the hands of the murderous Ghazas had it not been for the devotion and courage shown by Murray, my orderly, who threw me across a pack horse and succeeded in bringing me safely to the British lines. Worn with pain and weak from the prolonged hardships which I had undergone, I was removed with a great train of wounded sufferers to the base hospital at Peshawar. Here I rallied and had already improved so far as to be able to walk about the wards and even to bask a little upon the veranda when I was struck down by enteric fever, that curse of our Indian possessions. For months my life was despaired of, and when at last I came to myself and became convalescent, I was so weak and immaculated that a medical board determined that not a day should be lost in sending me back to England. I was dispatched accordingly in the troop ship Orontes and landed a month later at Portsmouth Jetty with my health irrevocably ruined, but with permission from a paternal government to spend the next 9 months in attempting to improve my health. I had neither kith nor kin in England and was therefore as free as air, or as free as an income of 11 shillings and sixpence a day will permit a man to be. Under such circumstances, I naturally gravitated to London, that great cesspool into which all the loungers and idlers of the empire are irresistibly drawn to. There I stayed for some time at a private hotel in the Strand, leading a comfortless, meaningless existence and spending such money as I had, considerably more freely than I ought to have. So alarming did the state of my finances become that I soon realized I must either leave the metropolis and resuscitate somewhere in the country, or I must make a complete alteration of my style of living. Choosing the latter alternative, I began by making up my mind to leave the hotel and take up my quarters in some less pretentious and less expensive domicile. On the very day that I had come to this conclusion, I was standing at the Criterion bar when someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around and I recognized young Stamford, who had been a dresser under me at Bart's. The sight of a friendly face in the great wilderness of London is a pleasant thing indeed to a lonely man. In old days, Stamford had never been a particular crony of mine, but now I halted with him with enthusiasm, and he in his turn appeared to be delighted to see me. In the exuberance of my joy, I asked him to lunch with me at the Holborn, and we started off together in a hansom. I don't know, maybe I'm not old enough. Somebody got it. Somebody figured it out. Somebody figured it out. Whatever have you been doing with yourself, Watson? He asked in undisguised wonder. It's funny, I look up just to check and boom, there it is. As we rattled through the crowded London streets, you are as thin as a lath and as brown as a nut. I gave him a short sketch of my adventures and had hardly concluded it by the time we'd reached our destination. Poor devil, he said. After he had listened to my misfortunes, what are you up to now? Looking for lodgings, I answered. Trying to solve the problem as to whether it is possible to get comfortable rooms at a reasonable price. That's a strange thing, remarked my companion. You are the second man today that has used that expression to me. And who was the first? Fellow who was working at the chemical laboratory up at the hospital. He was bemoaning himself this morning because he could not get someone to go halvesies with him in some nice rooms which he had found. It's funny he says halvesies. That's interesting considering when this was written. We say halvesies now. By Jove, I cried. If I really want someone to share rooms and expense, I'm the very man for him. I should prefer having a partner to be alone anyway. Young Stamford looked rather strangely at me over his wineglass. You don't know Sherlock Holmes yet, he said. Perhaps you would not care for him as a constant companion. Why? What is there against him? Oh, I didn't say there was anything against him. He's just a little odd. In their ideas, an enthusiast in some branches of science, as far as I know, he's a decent enough fellow. A medical student, I suppose. No, I have no idea what he intends to be. I believe he is well up the anatomy and he is a first-class chemist. But as far as I know, he has never taken out any systemic medical classes. His studies are very desultory and eccentric. But he has amassed a lot of out-of-the-way knowledge which would astonish his professors. Did you never ask him what he was going in for? I asked. No, he's not a man that is easy to draw out, though he can be communicative enough when the fancy seizes him. I should like to meet him, I said. If I'm going to lodge with anyone, I should prefer a man of studious and quiet habits. I'm not strong enough yet to stand much noise or excitement. I had enough of both in Afghanistan to last me for the remainder of my natural existence. How could I meet this friend of yours? He is sure to be at his laboratory. He either avoids the place for weeks, or else he works there from morning until night. If you like, we will drive around together after lunch. Certainly. And then the conversation drifted away to other channels. As we made our way to the hospital after leaving the Holborn, Stamford gave me a few more particulars about the gentleman who I proposed to take as a fellow lodger. You mustn't blame me if you don't get on with him, he said. I don't know anything more of him than I have learned from meeting him occasionally in the laboratory. He proposed this arrangement, so you must not hold me responsible. If we don't get on, it will be easy to part company, I said. It seems to me, Stamford, I asked, looking hard at my companion, that you have, for some reason, for washing your hands of the matter. Is this fellow's temper so formidable, or what is it? Don't be merely mouthed about it. It's not easy to express the inexpressible, he answered with a laugh. Holmes is a little too scientific for my taste. It approaches cold-bloodedness. I could imagine his giving a friend a little pinch of the latest vegetable alkaloid, not out of malevolence, you understand, but simply out of a spirit of inquiry in order to have an accurate idea of the effects. To do him justice, I think that he would take it himself with the same readiness. He appears to have a passion for definite and exact knowledge. Very, very right, too. Yes, but he may be pushed to excess. When it comes to beating the subjects in the dismissing room with a stick, it is certainly taking a rather bizarre shape. Beating the subjects? Yes, to verify how far bruises may be produced after death. I saw him at it with my own eyes. And yet you say he's not a medical student? No. Heavens know what the object of his studies are. But here we are, and you must form your own impressions about him. As we spoke, he turned down a narrow lane and passed through a small side door, which opened a wing of the great hospital. It was familiar ground to me. I needed no guiding as we ascended the bleak stone staircase and made our way down the long corridor with its vista of whitewashed walls and dull-colored doors. Near the farther end of a low-arched passage, branched away from it and led to the chemical laboratory. This was a lofty chamber, lined and littered with countless bottles. Broad, low tables were scattered about, which bristled with retorts, test tubes, and little Bunsen burners with their blue flickering flames. There was only one student in the room who was bending over a distant table, absorbed in his work. At the sound of our steps, he glanced around and sprang to his feet with a cry of pleasure. I found it! I found it! He shouted to my companion, running towards us with a test tube in his hand. I have found a reagent which is participated by hemoglobin and by nothing else. Had he discovered a gold mine, greater delight could not have shone upon his features. Dr. Watson, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, said Stamford, introducing us. How are you? He said cordially, gripping my hand with a strength for which I should have not given him credit for. You have been in Afghanistan, I presume. How on earth did you know that? I asked. Never mind, he said, chuckling to himself. The question now is about hemoglobin. No doubt you see the significance of this discovery of mine. It is interesting. Chemical, no doubt, I answered, but practical. Why, man, it is the most practical medico-legal discovery for years. Don't you see that it gives us an invaluable test for bloodstains? Come over here now. He seized me by the coat sleeve and in his eagerness drew me over to the table at which he had been working. Let us have some fresh blood, he said, digging a lawn bodkin out of his finger and drawing off the results drop of blood in a chemical pipe. Now I add this small quantity of blood to a liter of water. You perceive that the resulting mixture has the appearance of pure water. The proportion of blood cannot be more than 1 in a million. I have no doubt, however, that we shall be able to obtain the characteristic reaction. As he spoke, he threw into the vessel a few white crystals, and then added some drops of a transparent fluid. In an instant, the contents assumed a dull mahogany color, and a brownish dust was precipitated at the bottom of the glass jar. Ha ha! He cried, clapping his hands and looking as delighted as a child with a new toy. What do you think of that? It seems to be a very delicate test, I remarked. Beautiful, beautiful. The old Guacum test was very clumsy and uncertain. So is the microscopic examination for blood corpuscles. The latter is valueless if the stains are a few hours old. Now this appears to act as well whether the blood is old or new. Had this test been invented, there are hundreds of men now walking the earth who would long ago have paid the penalty for their crimes. Indeed, I murmured. Criminal cases are continually hinging upon that one point. A man is separated of a crime months perhaps after it had been committed. His linen and clothes are examined, brownish stains discovered upon them. Are they blood stains, mud stains, rust stains, fruit stains? What are they? That is a question which has puzzled many an expert. And why? Because there was no reliable test. Now we have the Sherlock Holmes test, and there will no longer be any difficulties. His eyes fairly glittered as he spoke, and he put his hand over his heart and bowed as if to some applauding crowd conjured up by his imagination. You ought to be congratulated, I remarked, considerably surprised at his enthusiasm. There was the case of von Bischoff at Frankfurt last year. He would certainly have been hung had this test been in existence. Then there was the Mason of Bradford, and the notorious Muller, and Lefray Montier, and Sampson of New Orleans. I can name a score of cases in which it would have been decisive. You seem to be walking calendar of crime, said Stamford with a laugh. You might start a paper on those lines. Call it the police news of the past. Very interesting reading it might be, too, remarked Sherlock Holmes, sticking a small piece of plaster over the prick of his finger. I have to be careful, he continued, turning to me with a smile, for I dabble with poisons a good deal. He held out his hand as he spoke, and I noticed that it was all mottled over with similar pieces of plaster and discolored with strong acids. We came here on business, said Stamford, sitting on the high three-legged stool and pushing another one in my direction. My friend here wants to take diggings, and as you were complaining that you could not get one to go halvesies with you, I thought I had better bring you two together. Sherlock Holmes seemed delighted at the idea of sharing his room with me. I had my eye on the suite on Baker Street. Of course it's going to be Baker Street, he said, which would suit us down to the ground. You don't mind the smell of strong tobacco, I hope. I always smoke ships myself, I answered. That's good enough. I generally have chemicals about, and occasionally do experiments. Would that annoy you? Oh, by no means. Let me see, what are my other shortcomings? I get in the dumps at times, and I don't open my mouth for days on end. You must not think I am sulking. When I do that, just leave me alone, and I'll soon be right. What have you to confess now? It's just as well for you two fellows to know the worst of one another before they begin to live together. I laughed at this cross-examination. I keep a bullpup, I said, and I object to Rose because my nerves are shaken. And I get up all sorts of ungodly hours, and I'm extremely lazy. I have another set of vices when I'm well, but those are the principal ones at present. Do you include violin playing in your category of Rose? He asked anxiously. Depends on the player. A well-played violinist is a treat for the gods. A badly played one, oh, that's all right, he cried with a merry laugh. I think we may consider the thing as settled. That is, if the rooms are agreeable to you. When shall we see them? Call for me here at noon tomorrow, and we'll go together and settle everything. He answered, all right, noon exactly. We left him working amongst these chemicals, and we walked together towards my hotel. By the way, I asked suddenly, stopping and turning to Stanford, how the deuce did he know that I came from Afghanistan? My companion smiled an enigmatic smile. That's just his little peculiarity. A good many people have wanted to know how he finds things out. Oh, a mystery, I cried, rubbing my hands. This is very quaint. I am much obliged for you for bringing us together. The property study of mankind is man, you know. You must study him then, Stammerforth said as he bade me goodbye. You'll find him a knotty problem. Though, I'll wager, he learns more about you than you ever learn about him. Goodbye. Goodbye, I answered, and strolled onto my hotel, considerably interested in my new acquaintance. And that is how Sherlock Holmes met
Question
Watson.
for you. Where did that come from?
That is in the... Here, I'll show you. I look like shit, so I'll hold it up to the camera. There you go. That is the complete Sherlock Holmes everything. So, everything.
The only reason I'm thinking is because some of the words, and it's not the way you read, it was the words that were put, make the author less intelligent than the character. Because he had Sherlock Holmes say that the man was hung, where Sherlock Holmes, being as intelligent he was, would never have said hung, but hanged.
Yeah.
There's a few others. I found that funny.
So this is the beginning of this is called A Study in Scarlet. And it is a reprint from the reminiscences of John H. Watson, MD, late of the Army Medical Department. And the first chapter is called Mr. Sherlock Holmes. It gives you an idea who Watson is, how they met. That's just the first chapter of that story. So there are more. But all of this is in time order. So
Gotcha.
It's not written order. It's in chronological order, not this is the way it was written order.
Right. So this is potentially an author many years after the invention of Sherlock Holmes.
It is possible. Because this is everything.
That would make sense because it seemed... Sorry, I just picking some things off that didn't quite seem... No, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed the story. Just there's a few words where I'm going, yeah, that's not Holmes.
So
cool.
We'll get into more. I don't know. I like doing little things like that and reading stuff like that. It's fun, and I hope you guys have fun and Adega has fun. And
no, that was great. Thank you.
Guys, we're going to get out of here. We'll be back with the week in review with Arwen Avalon, Dave Bob, and the Dawn of Valhalla, the Valhalla Mafia, whatever you want to call it.
Do you run the show?
Apparently.
Got a ring so everyone can kiss it.
That's right. Kiss the Pope. Daryl knows what I'm talking about. Kiss the Pope. Kiss the Bishop. So, guys, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Guys, take care. Be excellent to each other. Always speak, friend, enter. We'll see you in the morning on the Week in Review. Have a great Thursday night, everybody.
See ya.
These videos are tremendous. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hammer that notification bell.